Okay, week 6. We're getting through here, almost at the midpoint of the book. And 9 and 10 are kind of two short chapters, so we're going to go over both of them. Just an overview. Last week we looked at the second scene in heaven in the book of Revelation. First, the elders all gathering around the throne, and then the great multitude. Then we began to look into the first 4 of the 7 trumpets. And remember, the 7 seals were first, then the 7 trumpets. Then we'll eventually get to the 7 vials. So we've seen the first 4 of the trumpets. Today we'll look at chapter 9. This will be the 5th and 6th trumpet, and which, as we'll see, will increase the devastation on planet Earth. Then in chapter 10, we will have the second of what some describe as an interlude in the book of Revelation. In other words, where they're describing events, and then all of a sudden they stop into like the throne room. That will be the first interlude, and then they describe events. And then chapter 10, John stops again, has another little illustration, and then there'll be one more interlude later on in the book. So doing our verse by verse covering of this book, we'll read every single one again today, 9 and 10, and begin to dissect them. Just once again, before I start, the thing I'd mentioned, I think it was last week, how there's a lot of talk today about the glory of the Lord and how it's really going to be poured out in the last days, and I don't disagree with that. But I also know, some have interpreted this book as already happened, and the events that have read about and are reading about. There's never been anything in history like this before. So I just can't take the perspective that most of Revelation has already occurred. The things that they're going to be described, and especially a couple of things today, I can't think of anything in history that will compare that has happened in the past. And so that's why I continue to believe these are describing events that have yet to occur. All right, chapter 9, the 5th trumpet. Then the 5th angel sounded, and I saw a star from heaven, which had fallen to the earth, and the key of the bottomless pit was given to him. He opened the bottomless pit, and smoke went up out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened by the smoke of the pit. Then out of the smoke came locusts upon the earth, and power was given them as the scorpions of the earth have power. They were told not to hurt the grass of the earth, nor any green thing, nor any tree, but only the men who do not have the seal of God in their foreheads. All right, last week we talked about that seal of God. All right, we've heard in the past about the mark of the beast. This seems to have the opposite effect. But those who are on earth who have the seal of God, and this is the followers of the Lord. Is this the 144,000 only that we talked about last week, or is it all the people on the earth who are serving the Lord? So that raises the question: is the church gone? Is the church here? Who are these people that the Lord is talking about? Also notice what the instructions were here. The first 4 trumpets seem like all of them were against things of nature, but here in verse 4 it said, "Don't hurt the grass of the earth, nor any green thing, nor any tree, but only the men who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads." So this 5th trumpet is specifically against those who are not serving the Lord. I remember about, I guess it's been almost 20 years now, almost. Y'all remember the Left Behind series by Tim LaHaye? He came out with eventually a total of 12 books, and my friend Eddie got me into the dramatized audio. And, so instead of reading it, it's not a word for word, it actually acts it out with sound effects and stuff like that. And the very first one I heard, he was on the 3rd one, so I want you to listen to this. And it was like a news broadcast describing this event here, and then all of a sudden these things come out of there, and it was really just, spellbound. Now, remember we were riding around one Friday evening, and it was actually scary thinking about that, a straight stone falling to the ground, and these creatures coming out of it. Verse 5 says, "And they were not permitted to kill anyone, but to torment them for 5 months, and their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings a man. There's an interesting verse. I don't ever heard anything like that before. It's 5 months, I guess, and especially the next verse. And in those days, men will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, and death flees from them. Now, I've never read anything before like that. I don't think I've never seen anything like that. These creatures, these beings, whatever it is, will have power to hurt man for 5 months, and they won't be able to die. Thankfully, all of my life I've been healthy. The only thing I can, ever had is a cold or occasionally the stomach bug. The cold is annoying because it's miserable for a couple days, and then it just lingers on, and then you don't really notice it 10, 12 days later, and you say, oh, I don't have a cold anymore. The stomach bug is different. Fortunately, like I said, I only get that about once a decade, and it's just one day of absolute misery. You're going to the bathroom, throwing up, and in between, all you want to do is just lay there. You don't want to eat, you don't want to watch TV, you just want to lay and sleep. The only positive thing about it, usually whenever I've had that, that day is like the worst day of your life, and nothing in the world means anything to you. And then a day later, you almost have no symptoms at all, and you're ready to move on. So it's good that it doesn't last long, but it's miserable in the fact your day's horrible. Just imagine a day like that for 5 months, day after day after day. And it says death won't be able to flee from them. So this makes me to, as I'm going to read the next few verses, some have interpreted this to be like military weapons, but the kind of pain that these beings are inflicting makes it sound like something in the spirit world who's have the ability to hurt man so much that he wants to die, to inflict pain on him for 5 months, but he's unable to die. All right, what do they look like? The appearance of the locusts was like horses prepared for battle, and on their heads appeared to be crowns like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men. They had hair like the hair of women, and their teeth were like the teeth of lions. I'm almost tempted to try and draw what this thing is describing here. Well, let's see if we can do some, okay. Appearance of a locust. You know what a locust looks like, or something like a grass cutter.
Grass cutter?
Grasshopper, something like that.
Scares me, that.
So I better not embarrass myself.
You already have.
I know. I'm going to embarrass myself worse. Crowns like gold, faces are like the faces of men, their hair like the hair of women, so long hair, and their teeth were like the teeth of lions. So flipping back again to another one of my end time things, one of the very first series of movies, Thief in the Night. I don't know if any of you all seen that. I remember the third one came out. There was the first two had come out years ago, and the third one had just come out in the Baptist church in town. They were showing one a week, and that was the first time I saw that. And they actually they went with in the left behind, these things were like this big. In that movie, they were like actual gigantic, and I guess they didn't want to embarrass themselves. They probably didn't have a whole lot of money for props and stuff, so they actually never showed the creature. They just made this horrible noise. You know how like locusts sound in the morning? It was like that, only terrible, and everyone's hiding their ear. And then all of a sudden you see this giant shadow of, looks like a giant scorpion tail, and it comes inside and stings a couple of the people. And then it just shows, the music's playing, and they're just wallowing around in agony, describing this event. What would it be like? Some say that. Now others have said this is describing military weapons for a last day war. We'll read again. The appearance of the locusts was like horses prepared for battle. Some were saying maybe that could be describing army tanks or helicopters. On their heads would be crowns of like gold. Their faces were like the faces of men. And I don't know where they get the hair of women, and their teeth were like the teeth of lions. But maybe it's just they're saying this is a first century man trying to describe 20th or now 21st century warfare. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots. So some made that say, that could be helicopter or an airplane. Of many horses rushing to battle, and that is a lot of horses as far as horsepower. They have tails like scorpions, and stings in their tails is their power to hurt men for 5 months. So it says the 5 months again. That's something that really seems to, separate it from the physical to spiritual. I don't know of any kind of military weapon that has an instrument in it that's designed to hurt man for 5 months. And here is a thing that really seems to cap it off to me in verse 11, that it's probably talking about a spiritual thing. They have a king over them, the angel of the abyss, and his name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in the Greek he has the name Apollyon, and has a little note here, and that means destruction. Interesting to note, I've heard a lot of angelic names before, but there's only actually 4 in the Bible. The 2 we all heard of: Michael the warrior and Gabriel the messenger. Then there's the reference of the devil's former life. His name was Lucifer, and even some say that wasn't really talking about him, but most agree that when they make reference to Lucifer in the Old Testament, so that's the 3rd mention of the angel. And the only other place where an angel is mentioned is here, and it lists as Abaddon or Apollyon. Now there is a commentary about who these beings are and where have they been. I wanted to read a couple of verses in one in 2 Peter and one in Jude. Second Peter 2 and 4. For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to pits of darkness reserved for judgment, He did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah. Okay, so this verse seems to describe that there are a certain amount of the fallen angels that the Lord actually, locked away, and they don't even have any influence on man because they were so wicked, the acts they did. Could this be referring to them? Is this their final release after thousands of years in the abyss? Also, Jude, a couple books over, just before Revelation, references this too in verse 6. And angels who did not keep their own domain, but abandoned their proper abode, he has kept in eternal bonds and under darkness for the judgment of the great day. So could it be referring to them? When did the angels fall? In a couple chapters ahead, we'll talk about a verse that may refer to this. So whatever the case, all these things seem to be pointing to spiritual and increased demonic activity. And I wanted to also read verse 12 as we close it out. The first woe is past. Behold, 2 woes are still coming after these things. And what is that referring to? Remember last week, the last verse of chapter 8. Then I looked and heard an eagle flying in mid-heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the 3 angels who are about to sound. And then when he finishes, he sees 2 trumpets. In verse 12 it says, the first woe is past. Behold, 2 woes are still coming after these things. So in other words, that's been bad, but there's still 2 more to come, and the events are only going to continue to get worse. So my view, the 5th trumpet, it's a spiritual thing. Although these creatures will inflict physical pain, but whoever's left on the earth as a believer following the Lord, I believe will be exempt from this. So if you believe the rapture has occurred, you still believe people will be getting saved during this time. And if you believe the church goes through part or all of the tribulation, there will be people on the earth no matter the case. But I believe they'll be protected from this. These are things specifically against the ungodly in a way for the Lord to say, trying to get their attention. repent, turn to me. But as usual, man hardens his heart. We have the sixth trumpet. Another question arises when you read the fifth or the sixth trumpet. Is it spiritual or is it actually physical beings? Then the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, one saying to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, release the four angels who were bound at the great river Euphrates, and the four angels who have been prepared for the hour and day and month and year were released so that they would kill a third of mankind. I want to do a little illustration here when it says a third of mankind. All right, in Revelation 5, it said it has power to kill a fourth of the earth. All right, so we'll say each of these represents 2 billion people. So say that's about right now. It'd be 8 billion. Cut it down to 6. Now it says has the power to kill a third of the earth. 1, 2, 3. Knock off a third more. That takes you down to 4 billion, or 1/2 of the earth wiped out. Imagine that, and not finished yet. So it means, some people talk about, the corona, and they'll say, well, it's only 1 in 10,000 die. This is 1 out of 2. That's a lot of people starting to die on the earth and still yet to come. So we can see this is a total purge. Once again, referring back to those who say the events in the book of Revelation have already occurred. Really nothing in history can point back to something this severe. I know the plague in Europe, bubonic plague, I think that took out, said some as many said as a quarter of Europe. So that's the thing, only thing that would be closed. But then once again, that's just one continent. You still had, of course, they had natives living in North and South America they didn't know about yet, but all of Africa and Asia. But that would be the only thing that would in any way resemble it. But this is 1/2 of the entire earth based on these two verses of a quarter, first 1 out of 4 and then 1 out of 3. The sixth trumpet also talks about the Euphrates River. It's the longest and one of the most historically important rivers in Western Asia. I think it dumps into the Gulf of, I forgot which Gulf that, maybe the Persian Gulf it pours into, and that's when we had all the incidents with Iraq and Iran over the last couple of decades. Along with the Tigris, one of the 2 defining rivers of that region. All right, so let's continue to read. So, verse 16, the number of the armies of the horsemen was 200 million. I heard the number of them. So the question rises again, is that physical? Is that an actual army of 200 million people? Or is it demonic? All right, right now on this earth, the U.S. is the 3rd largest country in the world as far as population. We have a little under 350 million. The 2 top countries are China and India, both over 1 billion. China still has the most, but they said India will pass them sometime this century. So those 2 nations, they could possibly are getting to the point that would still be 1 out of 200 million would be about 1 out of 5 of those. So that would be pushing it, but it could be a coalition. Who knows? It could be the Islamic world. It could be several things gathering together, or then some hold out to the fact this could be a spiritual thing, demonic entities, 200 million people. I've heard both interpretations. From this 5th trumpet, going back, it could be physical or spiritual. Most I've heard have said spiritual. The 6th trumpet, it could be physical, it could be spiritual. Most I've heard in this has thought it'd be actually physical, 200 million man army. This is how I saw the vision. Horses and those who sat on them, the riders had breastplates the color of fire and of hyacinth and of brimstone, and the heads of the horses are like the heads of lions, and out of their mouth proceed fire and smoke and brimstone. So this just sounds a lot similar like the first trumpet we just described. And a third of mankind was killed by these 3 plagues, by the fire and the smoke and the brimstone which proceeded out of their mouths. So looks like there will be, maybe a war all over the whole earth, or even disease. For the power of the horses is in their mouths and in their tails, for their tails are like serpents and have heads, and with them they do harm. Now we get down to the end of this sixth trumpet. The rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues, all right, here's the thing, did not repent of the works of their hands, so as not to worship demons and the idols of gold and of silver and of brass and of stone and of wood, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. And they did not repent of their murders, nor of their sorceries, nor of their immorality, nor of their thefts. So in spite of all of this, in spite of the seven seals with the famine, war, and death, in spite of the trumpets with meteors, giant meteors hitting the earth, destroying the water, sea creatures, trees, grass, possibly spiritual beings inflicting pain, maybe physical weapons inflicting pain, they still do not repent. Some people are just so hard-hearted and against the Lord. And it seems like you can see that attitude today in some people. They just seem so wicked. Many claim not to believe in God, yet they hate the God they say they don't believe in. And you just see just absolute blasphemy and vile words and thoughts. So it shows you that no matter what happens, some people just will not repent. As we get into really the intense areas of the tribulation period. And that concludes chapter 9. And then we go into, I'll call it the second interlude, Revelation 10. Once again, the first interlude was chapter 7 last week. And they talked about the scene in heaven, the 144,000 all around the throne of the Lamb. Chapter 10 is the second interlude. And then looking ahead, there's one more. Forgot what chapter that is, but we'll cover that in a couple weeks or so. In chapter 10, we have some symbolic language by John here. And I saw another strong angel coming down out of heaven, clothed with a cloud, and the rainbow was upon his head, and his face was like the sun, and his feet like pillars of fire. And he had in his hand a little book which was open. He placed his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land. So that's kind of like, symbolic language. One of my commentaries said, and this seems to make most sense, as it's kind of representing this is a message from heaven to earth, speaking to the people. And he cried out with a loud voice, says, when a lion roars, and when he cried out, the seven peals of thunder uttered their voice. Here's something interesting here. So this is another number 7 again. This seems to be different from the 7 seals and the 7 trumpets. It said, when the 7 peals of thunder had spoken, I was about to write, and I heard a voice from heaven saying, seal up the things which the 7 peals of thunder have spoken, and do not write them. So I guess to this day, only John, that angel, and of course the Lord knows what they said, but there must be some horrible things. But John was not even permitted to write what they're saying. I guess it was going to describe the events of judgment that are about to unfold on the earth. Then the angel whom I saw standing on the sea and on the land lifted up his right hand to heaven and swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created heaven and the things in it, and the earth and the things in it, and the sea and the things in it, that there will be delay no longer. In other words, what he's basically saying here, you've heard, we could say we've heard about these events for years, centuries, prophecies coming, but the angel's saying, when you see these things happen, there's no more delay. It's going to happen right now, and this is the time when God's final wrath is being poured out. Verse 7, but in the days of the voice of the 7th angel, when is he about to sound, then the mystery of God is finished, as he preached to his servants, the prophets. So as we're starting to get towards the back half of Revelation, all the prophecies of the Lord that have not occurred are going to finally be fulfilled. And this little interlude here is this angel showing John that, in other words, it's done, it's time, and those things that have not occurred are going to happen now. See if I can point out any of this. As we move to the final verses of the chapter, a couple of references in the Old Testament, what occurs there, again, another symbolic thing. Then the voice which I heard from heaven, I heard again speaking with me, and saying, Go take the book which is open in the hand of the angel who stands on the sea and on the land. So in this vision, this little book, John's told to go and take it. So I went to the angel, telling him to give me the little book, and he said to me, Take it and eat it. It'll make your stomach bitter, but in your mouth it will be sweet as honey. What do these little references mean? I remember years ago when I first started going to CCA, they used to sing this song, and it was literally taken right out from the songs. Psalm 19, 9 and 10, kind of makes reference to this illustration here. A lot of Psalms here, be with me, bear with me. 15. Psalms 19, 9 and 10. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true, they are righteous altogether. They are more desirable than gold, yes, than much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey, and the drippings of the honeycomb. So there's one reference there to the Word of God being sweet like honey. Jump ahead a few chapters in the Old Testament again to Ezekiel, when the Lord is starting to giving him visions. In the very near the book in Ezekiel 3, the first 3 verses of Ezekiel chapter 3. Then he said to me, Son of man, eat what you find, eat this scroll, and go speak to the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, and he fed me the scroll. He said to me, Son of man, feed your stomach and feed your body with the scroll which I am giving you. Then I ate it, and it was sweet as honey in my mouth. So there we have a couple of illustrations, I think just basically describing how beautiful and how, authentic and how truth the word of the Lord is. But here in Revelation, John said it was sweet in his mouth, but in his stomach it was bitter. And it's kind of a contrast. It's the word of the Lord, it's truth, but at the same time it's a message of judgment, and it's coming down on the earth. So it's got kind of a contrast. Even though it's sweet, it's bitter the same. So as much as John has seen, there's still more to come, and the bitterness will continue. And the verse closed out, and they said to me, You must prophesy again concerning many peoples and nations and tongues and kings. So in these 2 chapters, John has he's got a revelation of the 5th and the 6th trumpet, and then in verse 10, we've had an interlude. I'm not going to go into 11 yet. I'm going to save that for next week. That's probably one of my favorite things to talk about, discuss the topic there, the 2 witnesses, and we'll get into that fully next week, and then the 7th trumpet. So I wanted to take a little, now this interlude has ended, as we've studied this so far, the more I read this book, definitely do not hold to the belief that it's straight chronological. Like, in other words, it's the church, and then the tribulation starts, and then it goes straight through to the millennium. It just seems to be a lot of back and forth in Revelation. We'll just go after the church age. Chapter 4, we had the scene in heaven, and then the book with 7 seals, and then you had the 7th seals, it seems to describe events one by one that will happen. Then we get to this chapter 7, and we have a first interlude, and it goes back and describes the scene in heaven. And it may be describing the scene after all the saints have gathered there, where chapter 4 they've just got, not all of them are there. Chapter 7, it seems to describe them as being there. And a multitude from the tribulation. So it's kind of like chapter 7 shows what things will be like when everything is wrapped up. Then we go to 8, and we go back down to what I would believe is the tribulation again. We have the introduction of the trumpets. chapter 8, one by one, gave us the first 4 trumpets and how they all were judgment upon the things of the earth. And then chapter 9, the 5th and 6th trumpet, they seem to be more intense. The first 4 trumpets seem to be against nature. These last 2 trumpets were against people. So the question arises, I wanted to bring it to the class and maybe open up a little bit to discussion. Who is suffering? Who has the seal of God in their forehead? I wanted to take a little mini poll here and ask people what their view is on the church, on the saints who will be here on earth, on, I guess I was going to take a view of hands. I was going to see what was your view on where the church is during this time. Are they here? Are they gone? How many of you would say that you believe in the pre-tribulation rapture? In other words, the rapture will occur just before the 7 years and the church will be gone. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, okay. We'll have a not sure category. So most in here. Okay, we'll do a little unofficial poll. We'll just go pre. So 7. Anybody? Probably the least popular. Midway. So that'd be a good political position. You giving a little bit here, a little bit there. Anybody on the mid trip? What about anyone believe the church is going through the entire tribulation? Anybody?
I don't.
Was it I do or I don't?
She said I don't. I
Okay,
don't think
right,
we'll go through
folks.
all the tribulation.
Okay, we'll put 1 here. I know of 1 in here. Anybody unsure? Anybody want to take that position? We got.
None of us are sure about it.
What's our 2, 7,
Good argument.
10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Do we have any no? Do we have any no votes at all? There is another position. There's pre-wrath. That's like you wouldn't call it a mid-trib, like a 3/4 trib. So that's just interesting to know. That's a view of most people, that the church is gone during this time. If that's the case, what are any of you have any comments on your feelings of who is it talking about here? Who is the Lord sealing? Who is he putting his hand of protection upon when these plagues are happening? Anyone have any comments or would like to?
Well, I think that the seal of the Lord is placed on 144,000 Jews that remain in Israel and have yet to exile out.
And it does specifically say his seal is on them.
Right.
So would you think, what about people, even if you believe the church has been raptured, those who come to the Lord during the tribulation, do you think they would be sealed and protected, or do you think they would be just as, I guess, susceptible to these plagues as the wicked?
I think they're martyred and they go up, and I think they're represented under the altar of
Right,
the
okay,
Lord.
from the
Yeah, and they're
Revelation.
martyred. So
5.
those are the ones that refused to take the mark of the beast that got killed during the tribulation.
And do you think there will be survivors, though? So basically, you would say, if you miss the rapture and you want to serve the Lord, it's going to cost you your life.
Yeah.
I mean, some places of the world it costs you your life now,
Oh, yeah.
but then that could be the case. All right, that would be not in Scripture, but in conflict of this new belief of the glory of the Lord being poured out in the last days before His coming. That almost sounds like the church will be triumphant. That's a good point of discussion. In the days when I was pre-trib, it made the most sense in this sense here. All right, you got the rapture, then you have tribulation believers, all getting saved throughout the kingdom. But the ones who are left alive, they go into the 1,000-year reign, and begin to repopulate the earth. So in that sense, I guess I would think there would be some survivors to populate the earth. And then one of my negative things against the post-tribulation, if the rapture occurs at the end and the Lord catches away the church, then who's left to go into the kingdom if he separates, the righteous from the wicked? But there are some verses that tend to think that, not everybody will die in the tribulation period, and we'll get to that as time comes. So that's where we're at now. If we focus chronologically, I guess we could say we were around the midpoint, but it's difficult to say here. The seals seem to be at the beginning of the tribulation, but the final seals seem to describe events at the end. The trumpets are a little later, but these last couple of trumpets once again seem to describe events that are at an end. Next week, when we go into chapter 11, there's going to be something brought up that's really a big sign of the last days. There's also term, as far as it tells us how long this thing is going to last, start to show up in chapter 11, a description of time that we'll be talking about. And up until this point, it's just been mainly talking about events, but hasn't really given any kind of marker where you can say what's happening here, what's next, what's that. So I think that's all really had to cover here. Did anyone else have any comments they wanted to add to this?
I just wanted to mention something about the locust. Every time I read that about the locust, it reminds me of being in Fort Hood, Texas, on the station there. Me and her, she was down there. And everything's bigger in Texas, right?
Yeah. They
So,
say.
When you're riding, when we were riding to the post and at night, and you see these swarms around the lights, they were grasshoppers. Now I'm not gonna sit here and say they were bigger than horses. I ain't got enough nerve. Maybe a small dog,
Still pretty
but
big.
they were a lot bigger than we see around here.
Right, yeah.
And they swarmed like moth around there. Hundreds of them going around there. And when they fall to the ground or something, and you ride over them, you can hear them just crackling,
Yeah.
the whole time. Now, whether or not, Eddie's never mentioned it to me, and several times that we've been down there to visit, I've not seen that. So I don't know if it's in that one area or not.
Right.
But they were huge grasshoppers. And you could hear them when either wing,
And maybe whatever John is saying, that's the closest thing he can have to describe it. Anyone have any thoughts on those things we talked about when we talked about the scorpion and having the ability to hurt man for 5 months without dying? Anyone, did they think that's physical, spiritual? What's their thoughts on that?
I think it was physical.
I mean, do you think the
scorpions hurting.
yeah, I mean, do you think it's man-made things like instruments of war, or do you believe it's like a demonic thing that's calling
it's
it?
supernatural.
Yeah. That's what I tend to believe too. It just seems to be describing some unprecedented things. That's what
Things we've never seen.
yeah.
And after John wrote this, wasn't he sick many days? And
Well, I mean, here it says,
This is
I
all
think
one.
that here it talks about, taking and eat and being bitter in his stomach. But I think that might be an Old Testament prophet who was sick for many days. But whatever it saw him, literally made him, made it was
This
better.
was all one revelation.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Imagine a person living in, around the year 100 and seeing these things. It just, mind-boggling.
So there'll be no suicides, even if you try.
That's what I always, ever since a kid, when I've heard this verse, I said, I guess you won't be able even to take your life if this happens to you, because it says, death will flee from them. I've never seen anything in the Bible use that term before, only here. So anyone have any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
What else?
Sounds like
that
it'd be
could pop-
almost like paralyzed in a way.
Yeah.
If you're like
Right.
there's an octopus in Australia, the blue spotted octopus, and they said as you're dying, it's one of the worst tests you can go through because you can hear and see, and all your senses are working. Problem is, the only thing that's not working is you can't talk, you can't move, as you're feeling the pain. And that's I mean, it sounds something like that.
Yeah, I mean,
'cause-
usually the thing about, when you're not, when you think of an operation or something, at least you can't feel it, but that's like, you know, you can't move it, but you're still feeling it, so
It's almost
that,
like a dream.
yeah.
Like you can't wake. You want to wake up. You want to get out of it, but you're just you're there
Yeah.
paralyzed.
can you imagine that for
Twilight zone
Yeah.
type thing.
5 months of that, just imagine that, you know. One day would be horrible, day after day after day. And then at the verse said, they still would not repent of their murder. Just sometimes when people have a hard heart, some repent and some heart gets harder. So,
Yeah, I can't understand that.
yeah.
Well, Kevin, like that, you mentioned a couple weeks ago about, Israel, have been trying to negotiate with a couple other places, Palestine and another area and all, and they just have fought for so many years over this, like, 2 or 3 little areas. But now, they decided, this one country has decided to, give in a little bit and work with Israel, and, they're supposed to sign some kind of peace treaty or some kind of,
Yeah,
did
they
they
said
already do it?
this is kind of the third major one since Israel's becoming, every time there's a peace treaty in Israel, it makes you wonder, you know, is this leading to the final 7 years? So I'm gonna watch anxiously how many of the other nations go in on this. In my daily Bible reading today, I'm in Ezekiel, and it talks about the war with Gog and Magog. That's another thing that's, you know, is that in Revelation? Is it just before the book of Revelation? So we're still events to about unfold here, and you know, it's interesting to watch. So all we can do is continue living our lives, you know, like the Lord won't come in our lifetime. Continue witnessing to people, doing your part, but keeping an eye on these events and watching what happens and seeing. Next week, really looking forward to next week, and it's just too much just to start now. As we get into the first, we'll get into the identity of the witnesses, and then the temple is mentioned for the first time, and it's just the first half, second half of the tribulation, all those things. But let's say we'll save chapter 11 for next week, and that'll probably be the only chapter we'll go over with, and try to get some watch for this board, get a clear board. I have a lot of talking about that. Anyone else have anything?
The angels of the Euphrates, why do they call them angels?
I'm thinking maybe, could they be demonic, you know, even just because the Lord is, you know, he's still in control of them. In other words, he's released them to do their damage, and sounds like maybe it'll dry up, or they have authority over it to, you know, to stop the flow. So
Those angels were actually created by God before they fell, right?
Right.
Before they were put in chains. So is there a transformation to their looks and everything after they fall from?
well, I don't have a biblical answer, but I always years ago got all these Chick comics from Jack Chick, and he was very dramatic, and he had a picture in there of all the angels, you know, looking like how you thought an angel would look, with their robes and kind of long hair, and then the next picture, and they look like these hideous creatures, you know, like pigs and all kinds of so possibly so, you know, so you know.
As a fallen man created, you know, like we are now, we're not in our glorified body.
Yeah,
I wouldn't think
So
they
there
look
could
the
be
same.
a difference in the look.
I wouldn't picture a demon looking like an angel. So I mean, I guess they can be deceived, you know, and you know, take on appearance of something, but their true image, you know, I would picture, you know, demonic looking, like a serpent or something like that. Never seen one, thankfully. But
They say it's very possible that these angels are held in the Euphrates, because the parts of the Euphrates are extremely deep.
and this could be referring to that verse back, you know, kept in
Right,
chains
so it's
or
not just
reserved.
like the Potomac River or
Right.
something where it's
Just,
extremely.
just imagine the pent up evil in them. They've been confined for centuries, and then they're finally released. What damage they could do.
We're seeing it, things getting more evil all the time.
Yeah.
Because it used to be the two parties, Republicans and Democrats, they didn't agree on anything, but now I think they hate each other.
I've kind of imagine now it's just the hate for each side, and that they've always disagreed, but never had the hate like this. Two.
Homeless too.
Mm-hmm.
Devil's out there, for sure.
good discussion. Lord, thank you for our lesson this week. Help us to continue to dive into your word. Reveal to us your plan for the ages, what is about to come, and may we do our part to bring the lost to you. I ask this in Jesus' name, amen.